Hi, Glenn Davis, Scenic Director at Willow Creek Church. I wanted to go through and show you how we created the Kryptonites. But first of all, I wanted to show you our stage drawing that we'll be building for the GLS. So these are the Kryptonites that I have my arrow on. They're the blue, dark blue units. You can see we're creating 21 of these units, and they're all various sizes. By the way, the yellow wall that's in back, the two walls, are LED walls that we're going to be using. So the Kryptonite unit here it is, the finished product. By the way, I'm doing this on phone, so forgive me for the wobbliness. I don't have a video team with me at this point, so I'm doing this ad lib. So we wanted to create the outer edge first, and the outer edge, no matter how many different heights you create, the upper part of the unit and the lower part of the unit, both of these are the exact same angles and same width. So these are 17 inches from the longest edge, which is the top, to here. That's 17 inches. And this is a 45-degree angle. We set our miter saw on that, or if you have a miter box, you'd put it on the 45-degree. And this is 22 and a half. So for clarifications, two 22 and a halves equal a 45 degree. Two 45 degrees equal a 90 degree. So some of the writing I may have, it says this is a 90 degree piece. So let's go into the next step. And we need some kind of support. So we've created these in order to be able to put nail these together, and they hold together. You may want to fly them from your ceiling. They may be ground supported, but this really makes it strong and secure. So in order to create these angles, what I've done is, once you have these two together, you could put a scrap piece of glue on underneath it and just scribe it with a pencil. And that's what I've done here. Now you need two of these, one at the top and one at the bottom. And then our other angle, which is the 22 and a half degree angle, same thing. So I placed my 1x2s on top of this and then scribed that angle, and then you cut it out on a saw. So and then the next thing, we put glue, some dabs of glue onto the 1x2s, and then we have a brad nailer that we're using. Staple gun would work as well. Now for this board, whatever length that you're creating, for example, if you're creating a 6-foot height from tip to tip, then this is exactly from here to this point. If you drew an imaginary line from here all the way straight over, that would, from here up, would be 1 foot. So if you're creating a 6-foot, then this would be 1 foot. Down here would be another foot, and so this would calculate at 4 feet. So from this edge to this edge would be 4 feet for a 6-foot unit. Now, once we have nailed all these on, this is what the edge looks like. Finished unit. Now, one thing I want to say, these edges, try to get this piece either flush or further in, because we're going to be putting a edge around here, and you don't want this to protrude out. So the next thing is creating the plywood, the inner layer of plywood that will nail the coroplast to. And the plywood is 2 foot wide for this unit. And then however height you want. So if it was 6 foot, then you would create this plywood 6 foot in length. Now, in order to know what the cuts are, we put our finished edge up onto the luan, and then outline this edge with pencil, and then you could saw this luan that matches up to this. Another thing, when you're putting this luan on, I allowed a little bit, so when I say 2 feet, when you put these together, this will actually be a fraction over 2 feet from this point to this point. The reason why I did that, again, is make sure that the edge of the plywood is not going beyond the trim edge. So the trim edge is actually sticking out over, and you don't have to worry about when you put the trim on. All right, so once that's all done and created and you've cut it out, the next thing you want to do is create some pipe supports. Now on the back side of these, I've created these pipe supports. Reason why we're putting them on now, we want to put the screw in from the front to suck this into the plywood. We don't want to do it the opposite way because there's not enough surface for the screw to hold. So, by the way, these don't have to be this long. It just happened to be a scrap that we put up. They could be as short as this, whatever scraps you have. And then it doesn't make too much difference as far as the length between here and there. You could choose whatever this is. It could be up. It just doesn't make a difference. So your pipe's going to come through here. You're going to put a strap here, a strap up here. The main thing is that you get a straight line from this point all the way up to the other point to give you an idea of what to make these center. So once these are screwed on, again from the front side, this is the back side of the luan plywood, then you could start painting it. You want to paint all of the luan that goes toward the front side, toward the audience, and then you want to paint all the edge gray. So what we're using is a Behr paint. It's called Anonymous Gray. I've got a picture on the site of the formula. We're using a flat gray. And then once you're done with that, you could start cutting out the coroplast. Now I've got some samples here that I cut out. Just give me a moment. And I wanted to show you the flute direction. When we were on the webinar the other day, I know that was a little tricky trying to figure that all out. So I drawn some lines here to show you how we staggered the flutes and also the dimensions of this coroplast. So we're using 3 dimensions. One's a 4.5, one's a 3-inch, one's a 7.5. And the line is the direction of the flute. You could see this line of the coroplast going this way and this line of the coroplast going this way. So we staggered the flute. This is the back layer of the coroplast. And we created it's not a random, but a unified grouping. So we started out with 4.5, went with 3, 7.5, then we start all over again, 4.5, 3, 7.5. All right, let me show you the front side. So this is what it looks like once you place it on. And these are placed on at 45-degree angles. Remember that we've already established a 45-degree here. So use that line and come on down with it. We're using staples to staple it onto the plywood. So that's the back layer. And then the next layer, all the flutes are going the same direction. So give me a moment as I put these on. So we're also doing the same kind of thing to make it uniform. Here, the only difference is the flute is all going the same direction on the front layer. Now, we're going from, remember the larger unit is 7.5 inches, and this is a 3-inch piece. Then it goes down to 4.5. Then it starts all over to a 7.5. So in order to get this distance here, we can go take our 4.5 piece, put it in here as a guide before we staple it, and then work all the way down with our different widths. So that was 4.5. The next one would be 7.5. So I put that there. That helps me as a guide to be able to put this next one on. And then the next one would be a 3-inch. So I got a 3-inch guide here. Put this here like that. And then now we could nail that one. And then remove our guides. So that's what created, you can see here how it turned out. Naturally, when we start putting our edge on, some of this is covered, and that's fine. The other thing you might consider is creating this line to go on the same line all the way down to the next unit. So if you're creating 4 units, this line would be uniform like a match, but you will need to determine your width between this unit and the next unit in order to make this line straight through. Now that's what we're doing. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow that rule. It's not a rule, but that's just a creative choice that we made. So once that's on, once we've got all the layers on, now we take the plywood and cut out our sides. So I've created some sides here already. These are 4 inches wide. You can make them however depth you want, but for us, we made them 4 inches. And what I recommend on this, in order to get a clean edge meaning when these two come together, what I do is measure, again, this being exactly, if we're creating a 6-foot unit, then this would be 4 foot long. So then I would cut this right at 4 foot. So you can see this is our first prototype, the things we ran into. So sometimes you do our best in trying to make this perfect, but sometimes it doesn't work. So what should have happened, that we only had a few hours to make this, is that we cut this and allow this to come down, and then you have a closer seam. So you'll have to kind of trial and fit it. It's not exact science in this. The other thing you could do in covering this seam is putting some caulk there, painter's caulk, or we've used package tape. So create a small piece, a small width of package tape, put that on there, and then you could take a roller and paint gray over it, and then it disappears. And you could also putty, use the same kind of caulking. You don't like the edges showing here. Now this is a close edge. You could see how the Luan came together. You can't even tell once you paint it on the other side. You can see that. And then here's another one. So now we've got it close on this one. And we got a little edge here. So again, caulking or tape. Now, once this is all together, you might, again, trim it up. And I wanted to make mention of this. So our supports, you could see a little bit of this sticking out. They'll have to be trimmed up with gray, but for the most part, you don't see any of that. So you have to be careful. Again, what I was talking about earlier, make sure your supports are even with the edge, or you can even make the supports a little bit smaller than the 1x2. Now on the back side, as we're putting the pipe in, remember we put our supports in already. So now we use, these are called conduit straps. And this is a 1/2-inch black pipe. And as we come down here, we had to drill a hole for our 1/2-inch pipe. And these being 3/4 inch wide, we came from the plywood on out, and that's where we started our hole 3/4 inch away from the plywood. Give us a good straight plumb once we put it in. This is a pipe flange. We screwed that on to a 1x12 by 16-inch base, and that supports the unit. There's not much weight to it. It's very light. Well, there you have it. I hope that helped, and have fun making one.